Hi. Since this video contains a lot of me rambling about why dictatorships are bad and democracy is good, I figured I'd put that ideal into practice and let you guys choose the next country I do a video on. So there's a post on my community tab, which is a poll, and the options are South Korea and North Korea in one video, which would be something new that I want to continue doing because I'll be able to get through more countries if I have videos that focus on more than one. But yeah, the options are the Koreas, Canada, Spain, Mexico, or Brazil. Got a little bit of every continent there except Oceania. Sorry, Aussies and Kiwis, your time will come soon. So go vote on that now if you want to, and on to the actual video. Welcome back to another crappy Headcanons video. I actually got something done for once, so that's a pleasant surprise. Unless you don't like these videos, but that's your problem. So, South Africa. Finally got an African country in there. Gonna have to leave a few warnings here because of the history of the country. There's gonna be discussion of racism and such, which, if you've been watching these videos, you've probably concluded that I think racism is bad based off the amount of times I've said it, but this video is gonna get pretty dark compared to some of the others because apartheid just went on for so long. It's not one of the situations where I can just say, oh, this war happened, people died, it sucked, the end, because so much of South Africa's history revolves around it. So I just want to warn anybody now, if this topic particularly upsets you and you don't want to hear me talk about it, feel free to skip out on this one. I would never understand what life was like for Black South Africans back then, so I feel I can't exactly speak to it very much, but I am slightly educated on the history and aware of what went on during the apartheid era because I spent 3 months learning about it in school, and I did some more research on the side for this video, so I feel relatively comfortable talking about the history itself, but I want to reiterate that it's pretty much impossible for me to completely comprehend on a personal level because I'm not a person of color and I've never had an experience like that, so I don't really know where I'm going with this. I just thought I'd mention it, but yeah, warning for discussion of racism in a negative light. Obviously racism is disgusting and it's something I will never understand. I'm gonna move on before I get angry. So my headcanon is different from some people's on this. South Africa during apartheid is a different person, country human, than the South Africa now. Apartheid South Africa does not deserve redemption, so we're wiping that slate clean with a new flag person thing. So present-day South Africa, who this video was mostly going to be about, but then I just started rambling in my script, and it talks a lot about the early history and stuff, but whatever. Yeah. I'm also going to do a speed paint of apartheid-era South Africa, which you're seeing on your screen, because I don't think I'd ever make a video solely about her, because, the two are just so connected, if that makes sense, in their history, but yeah. Present-day South Africa, let's talk about her instead. So, she's pretty generally warm and compassionate. She has a lot of, trauma and is very sympathetic to her peers whenever they're having problems. She genuinely wants to help people and make the world a better place and focuses mainly on her home continent in that through advocating for nonviolent problem solving. She wants to make sure that smaller and less powerful countries have a say in what goes on in the world, and she's just a real sweetheart, and she's a very peaceful person, and kind of tries to stay out of drama to keep up good relations with everyone. So her mother is apartheid-era South Africa. For simplicity, I'm going to refer to apartheid-era South Africa as the National Party of South Africa because that's what the ruling political party during apartheid was called. And I'll just mostly refer to the current non-racist South Africa as South Africa. Okay? Okay. But yeah, her mother was the National Party of South Africa, who was a terrible parent. More terrible parents, what a surprise here. The National Party's biological father was actually the Netherlands as opposed to Britain because the Dutch colonized Cape Town first. There's gonna be a pattern of Britain adopting other countries' children in this video series, but yeah. Namibia is her sister, and she has a grand total of 5 aunts, but honestly, well, I mean, like, the ones that are still alive, they kind of have more of a sisterly relationship, except Natalia, because she, like, kicked the bucket a long time ago, and Rhodesia, because she died before South Africa came to power, and she was an asshole. But Botswana is also her sister, as well as Lesotho and Eswatini, because they were sisters of the National Party. As I said, Rhodesia is also her aunt. She's dead, L shitter, racist shitter, but yeah, Rhodesia is also her aunt, which would make Zimbabwe and Zambia her cousins. She's pretty close to Zimbabwe. She also has 2 uncles who would be the Transvaal Republic and the Orange Free State. They don't exist anymore, but we'll get to that later. Surprisingly developed family tree here. Friendship time. She doesn't have any real enemies since she's trying to be neutral, like non-alignment movement and all that. Her and Switzerland would be friends, I bet. She's also friends with Namibia and Mozambique, again, Namibia being her sister. She's friends with pretty much everyone because she kind of just doesn't complain about other people, but those are her closest relationships. Yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up that part of the video. So let's move on to history. Yay, what an extremely pleasant conversation to have about this country in particular. I mean, I say conversation as if, like, this is a two-way interaction instead of me just talking to a microphone, but we don't have to talk about that, so yeah. So, in 1652, going back pretty far here for this video, the Netherlands established the Cape Colony, who is the same person as the National Party of South Africa, if that makes sense. Just like a name change kind of thing. They did some bad things, went to war with the natives a lot, typical crimes against humanity associated with the colonization of indigenous land, so not good. Then everything went to shit in the Netherlands, and Britain occupied the land from 1795 until 1803, when he was like, okay, bro, you can have your kid back or something. I don't know. Countryhumans is done. This concept is done. Everything about this is dumb, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. This is utterly stupid. But yeah, then the colony was literally handed straight back to Britain in 1805 during the Napoleonic Wars, so the Cape Colony officially became a British colonial territory in 1815. Britain got spooked by the Kingdom of Zululand. To be fair, he was kind of going on a rampage and absorbing a ton of territory belonging to other kingdoms and groups, but yeah, the Zulu kingdom was kind of an asshole. I'm not saying that the British weren't assholes. They were also assholes. Everyone in this situation is an asshole. It's just, like, a fact that the Zulu kingdom was also incredibly violent and killed a lot of people. Anyways, the British Cape Colony, which was their name now, had 2 brothers, like I said. Again, these would be Transvaal and the Orange Free State. I really hope I'm pronouncing Transvaal right, but I'm too lazy to look it up. Transvaal kicked Britain's ass in the First Boer War, but then during the Second Boer War, they both got their asses kicked by Britain and died in 1902. There were also the Xhosa Wars, really hope I'm pronouncing that one correctly, and the Anglo-Zulu War, and a few other wars, and this is all very complicated, but the bottom line is that at the end of the day, the Cape Colony annexed some shit. The Union of South Africa was established in 1910, combining the territory of the Cape Colony, Transvaal, the Orange Free State, and Natalia, who were known as the Orange River Colony and Natal at this time, respectively. Again, really, really hope I'm pronouncing that stuff right. The Cape Colony, like, the country human thingy, became known as the Union of South Africa, so they're not 2 different people. I just smacked my desk, oops. She just, like, changed her name and absorbed 3 of her siblings' territory, and they bit the dust. This is all very confusing, but history is confusing, so yeah. The Union of South Africa was established, and she was, like, kind of independent. It was a dominion of Britain, and, I mean, remember, the racist white people are still in charge, and, like, Union of South African National Party, she's the racist white people, even though, like, I mean, what kind of flag counts as a white person? I don't know. But anyways, the African National Congress, who is present-day non-racist South Africa, and the Union of South Africa's daughter, started getting her shit together in 1912 because she had the extremely hot take that racism was bad. I hate all the name changes. This is very annoying, but yeah. Cape Colony becomes known as the Union of South Africa, and then becomes known as the National Party later on. The African National Congress just becomes known as South Africa when the racists are kicked out of power, but we're not at that point yet. For now, though, we can mainly start talking about the ANC, the current South Africa. This video is mainly supposed to be about her, but from the family tree stuff to all the history, I felt like I should talk about everything leading up to the founding of the ANC. This video is probably going to be really long. World War I is kind of a thing. The Union of South Africa joined Britain's side, and the African National Congress was also involved. They helped a lot with the campaign in Africa and wrestled the German Empire's colonies away from him. And during World War II, the Union of South Africa and the ANC were pretty important to the war effort as well. The ANC didn't really get much recognition because racism, though, so that's shitty. While this was an important part of history and South Africa was heavily involved, I'm not going to talk about the war very much because it never really spread into the territory itself to a huge extent. Like, it was foreign activity stuff. Like, I mean, there were some pro-German groups and some terrorism, but that's all a mess, and I'd like to move on to talk about apartheid. That sounded weird. How do I reword that? I'm not excited to talk about apartheid. It's a very depressing subject and all, but I think it's probably going to be one of the most important parts of this video. In 1944, she became known as just the National Party for simplicity's sake because there was another name change of the country down the line, but the National Party was in power continuously from 1948 to 1994, so that's what we're going to be calling her. The NP started treating ANC like absolute shit. I mean, like, not that she wasn't already, but the racist-ass laws were extended, and it was horrible. Her sister Namibia was also treated terribly. Namibia was still a part of the state at the time and wasn't independent yet and was known as Southwest Africa, but I'm just gonna call her Namibia because it's easier, and this whole video is probably already extremely confusing. So ANC looks at this shit and she's like, guys, violence is not the answer, so she decided to, like, pull in India and commit some good old civil disobedience. Unfortunately, NP didn't take very kindly to this, and in 1960, the Sharpeville massacre happens, and I see no appropriate way to make this segment of the video humorous in any capacity because this is basically a literal race war. Making fun of the racists is acceptable and deserved, but making fun of their victims isn't very classy in my humble opinion. So this video is probably going to take on a darker tone, as I said in the beginning. After that happened, NP decided that ANC no longer had the right to exist and put out an even harsher ban on any kind of activism. ANC wasn't having this shit and started sabotaging everything because apparently what she had been doing up to this point wasn't enough somehow. And around this time, the country also left the Commonwealth, and everybody was probably collectively like, yeah, good freaking riddance. The international community also started trying to bully NP out of her abhorrent racism. She got banned from the Olympics. Oh, the horror. Whatever shall she do? Should she, I don't know, realize that apartheid was bad and apologize to everyone and go home so that South Africa could participate in anything ever again? Or should she keep being a sack of shit and ignore everyone else's advice? We all know what she did. She kept being racist. Nobody likes this. There were a lot of other internal conflicts and terrible policies that just really made everybody's life miserable. ANC was still trapped under her thumb, and she tried to do what she could, and of course she managed to make a difference, but she began to feel more and more hopeless. But she wasn't about to give up. She basically had the entire support of the world on her side, even though nobody intervened for some reason. like, there are dumber reasons to fight a war. Like, America's just like, yeah, let's intervene with literally everything else and fight a 20-year war in Vietnam to stop the scary communists, but, like, let's just be moral support when these poor people are constantly being massacred by their own government, when we could probably easily go in there and change that since the opposition doesn't have any friends or nuclear weapons. That was a sentence. I need to get back to my script. Wow. But, like, look, how do I word? Intervention is hard. It's difficult to decide whether or not to insert tens of thousands of people into a situation that they could easily lose their lives in, but, like, this wouldn't be, like, a guerrilla war in which everyone would be fighting an international terrorist organization or anything. It would be, like, taking down a central government that literally had zero support from anybody. And, I mean, I don't know a lot about war, so what I say shouldn't be taken very seriously, but, like, I don't understand how there weren't at least some UN peacekeeping forces sent in or something. Peacekeeping forces, my ass, they sometimes caused a lot of damage, but South Africa versus literally everybody would not be a war that the racist pricks would win. I mean, I guess, like, subsequent occupation by other countries might be an issue or something, but okay. I really need to get back to what I'm supposed to be doing. Where was I? Oh yeah, okay. So the world was showing its support for ANC, but nothing really changed for a while. The Soweto uprising and the township revolt, however, did cause NP to start to realize that she wasn't going to be able to keep doing this forever. This was just not a fight she's going to be able to win. So in 1989, she made no further effort to drag out the fighting. 1989 feels like a pretty good year for everyone. I mean, unless you were one of the Tiananmen Square protesters, but, like, as the song goes, we don't talk about Tiananmen Square, and that's not the point of this video anyway, so I should stop, like, interjecting random things, and I should really continue what I'm supposed to be doing. Where was I? Okay, yeah. In 1990, Namibia also became independent. This isn't a video about her, but I feel like since she's ANC's sister, I should throw that in there. But yeah, she started to chill out. I mean, I have something to read about this, but before I do that, I just want to say this isn't meant to, like, portray the National Party of South Africa in any sort of positive light or, like, give her any redeeming qualities. The fact of the matter is that the transition was peaceful after negotiations started up. I mean, hell, the president of South Africa at the time jointly won the Nobel Peace Prize with Nelson Mandela because they were able to actually work together in some capacity. I mean, it's really funny, though. In the pictures, you can see that de Klerk isn't as enthusiastic as Mandela, but anyways. Phoebe, stop messing with shit while I'm trying to record. Oh my god. Yeah, where was I? Apartheid is bad. The government that enforced it was bad, but the ending was weirdly... I don't know what word to use for it. I already said this, but it was peaceful, and they worked together, so that's cool, I guess. Here's the crappy fan fiction I wrote. And just a reminder that African National Congress is, like, the same countryhuman thingy as current South Africa, and the National Party was her mother and was, like, a pro-apartheid jackass. So, okay, cool. I mean, not cool, but, like, you know what I mean. I'm gonna start reading before I keep rambling and say anything else dumber than the things I've already said. I mean, okay. So this takes place on April 27th, 1994. The African National Congress gazed steadily at her mother, trying to keep her expression gentle. There weren't any eyes for her to meet, as the National Party still had her blindfold on, like she usually did. Oddly, ANC wasn't really angry anymore. She was free now, and she wasn't going to spend time dwelling on the past. That would only make reconciliation infinitely more difficult. She was going to let herself be happy. She deserved to be happy after all these years. Meanwhile, the National Party looked exhausted. A sense of defeat seemed to weigh down on her. She looked physically weak, which she probably was since she was on the brink of collapse. But she didn't seem upset about it. ANC still wasn't used to that look of resignation on her mother's face. For the longest time, she had ruled through fear and oppression, and on the few occasions that the bandana bearing the 3 other small flags was removed from her face, her eyes were always alight with either anger, cruelty, or hatred, or a mix of all 3. In all honesty, she couldn't tell what the NP was feeling right now. She didn't see any clear evidence of shame or guilt. Maybe there was some regret there, but that may have just been the regret that she couldn't remain in power. But there was also this weird sense of peace, like she had been relieved of something that had been burdening her. ANC knew that there hadn't been some gigantic moral revelation in which she realized that apartheid was horrible. She was pretty sure it had been more of a giving up sort of thing. She obviously knew that her rule wouldn't last forever. It was unrealistic. Economic sanctions had been placed on her by just about every country that had even the slightest concept of morality. The economy was an absolute shambles. It was like they were having their own little Great Depression Part 2, Racism Edition. Well, she was going to fix that. She hoped. She knew she wasn't going to be able to lift the country from its knees overnight. There was a lot of work to do. NP knew that just as well as she did, and in the last couple of years, she seemed to be willing to work with ANC as opposed to letting the country become an anarchic hellscape in which nobody knew who was in charge. ANC was still processing how she felt about her mother. She would never be able to say that all she had done was okay. She didn't believe that her actions were redeemable, but she could at least appreciate how, in these final years, she seemed to realize that it was in everybody's best interest to let go. ANC didn't really think that she could ever forgive her, but she was very grateful that, at the end of the day, she was able to make things right through cooperation instead of violence. The violence that did happen would always haunt her, that was for sure. It would haunt everybody, and some of it would probably continue. She knew that she couldn't fix things the second she stepped into her new role. Life just didn't work that way. But it would be worth it in the end. Seeing her peers, the other countries in Africa, fighting against their colonizers for independence was inspiring to her. Even more so was Zimbabwe overthrowing Rhodesia. She admired her cousin for that, and his success had made her feel like her mission was actually possible. And just a few years ago, with the liberation of Eastern Europe and the fall of the Soviet Union as a whole, she began to truly feel like things were getting better. In a way, she kind of thought that her mother saw the peaceful devolution of such a large, formerly oppressive state and realized that it was time for her to loosen her hold on her power as well. She brought herself out of her thoughts and refocused her eyes on NP, trying to think of something to say. Before she could say anything, her mother reached for her bandana and undid it, letting the piece of cloth with the other flags printed onto it uncover her green eyes. Every time ANC had seen those eyes, she felt scared. But now there was no more hostility in her gaze. "You don't have to say anything," NP said knowingly, her tone soft, almost respectful. "Does she respect me?" ANC questioned internally, mixed emotions rendering her unable to speak for a moment. "I know," she replied after a few seconds. "You keep looking at me like you want to." She wasn't sure how to respond to that at all. She'd be lying if she said that she didn't want to say anything, but at the same time, what on God's green earth was she supposed to say? "You can either say it now or lose the chance to do so, since I'm dying right in front of you and all," NP snorted. She was shocked by how well she was taking this, which only added another layer of confusing feelings on top of what she was already experiencing. She took a second to collect herself and then cleared her throat. "I didn't think it would end like this," she admitted awkwardly. "For a significant chunk of my life, I was convinced that this could only end in violence." She fell silent again, trying to think out what she wanted to say. "I thought the same. I always thought that it would end with violence, whether it ended one way or another. And I'm glad that wasn't the case." "Too much blood has already been spilled," her mother said. It was difficult for ANC to think of her as her mother. She'd been just about the worst parental figure on the face of the planet, but now that the dust was settling, part of her was almost able to feel a sort of connection that hadn't been there before. "Earth to South Africa?" NP called, waving her hand in front of her face. ANC jolted at the name she'd just been referred to by. South Africa?" she echoed, her eyes widening. "You're in charge now." The other countries stopped calling me that years ago because they supported you, she said. She glanced down at her hands. I guess I am South Africa, aren't I? She murmured, her heartbeat seeming to slow for some reason. This felt so surreal. Times change, I guess, NP said with a shrug. She's being surprisingly cool about this, she observed again, unsure of what to say. It's better not to pretend like something can last forever, her mother continued, examining her blindfold. That being said, it's best not to drag this out any longer either. It's time for me to give up my power, and it's time for you to set things right. ANC was still completely lost for words. This was quite obviously the end of the line, but she didn't know whether she should be saying goodbye or something, or if she even had an obligation to say goodbye. It almost felt like she was talking to a stranger instead of her mother. Again, it wasn't like she'd ever been a motherly figure in any sense of the word, but the NP of today felt like a completely different person than the person that she had been 5 years ago, before she had begun to relax. She wasn't sure what to do. She wasn't sure how to say goodbye. It wasn't that she was upset with the outcome of all this. She was thrilled that her mother was going to be gone, and that sounded really weird out of context, but either way, she was conflicted. After a few seconds of silence, ANC reached out to her. MP gently shook her hand, the gesture void of any hostility or resentment. No more words were exchanged between them. The peaceful gesture said everything. And now there's a time skip to 2012. Yay. Bro, my freaking family just got home again. How am I supposed to record this when they are within earshot of me reading fucking Countryhumans fanfiction? I can't do this. I need to move out of this house and live in a tiny box where I can record and nobody will hear me talking about Countryhumans. This is not ideal, but I'm gonna keep reading, and I'm gonna tone my voice down a little bit and sit in a corner. So yeah, sorry for the change in audio quality, but like I said, this is now set in 2012. So yeah. South Africa took in a deep breath, letting the scent of the ocean that was carried by the sea breeze calm her down as she lowered the last flag. It had been 18 years since her mother had fallen, but she had kept some of the old flags anyway for their historical value. She decided that now was the time for them to come down. Nobody needed such a bold reminder of the old regime and the violence that had happened under it. Even though the last years and the following transition had been relatively peaceful, it still represented hatred, and she saw no room for that in her country. She could never forgive the National Party for what she had done. She didn't deserve forgiveness, but the important thing was that it was over. And now South Africa just needed to remove this final symbol of the past. She had no intention of forgetting the past. That would be unwise. History was important because without history, nobody would ever learn from the mistakes that had been made by others. But this flag that she was lowering, this flag always felt wrong. It was out of place, flying on the grounds of the Castle of Good Hope. It belonged in a museum, not here. She carefully folded up her mother's flag once she had removed it from the flagpole before attaching her own and hoisting it up. It all felt a little surreal. The sight of her flag unfurling in the wind when she had raised it made her shiver. Joy and optimism made her heart feel light. Now, in the place of a symbol of hatred, was a symbol of hope. Oop, well, that's my shitty fan fiction. Again, not trying to put the National Party in any sort of redeemable light, and I struggled a little to write this because, what it did is completely irredeemable, and I also feel it's too fresh in the memories of so many people to portray it that way. But as I said before, the end of apartheid was peaceful, and the NP was part of that process. So I hope you enjoyed that. If possible, racism isn't very fun. Hearing me talk about racism probably isn't very fun. Also, I know that the National Party of South Africa didn't officially disband until a few years after apartheid ended, but for the convenience of a stupid bald flag headcanons video, she died after the ANC took over. So today, South Africa is the ANC, but of course just goes by South Africa now because that makes sense. Yes, it really did take 18 years to remove the old flag from the Castle of Good Hope, it was brought down in 2012, so that's what the little time skip thingy was about. I don't really have much more to cover for this video. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope to possibly continue this sort of formula sometimes where I do 2 characters in one video. Again, if I did North and South Korea, it would be one video, and I have a few other ideas in mind, like doing the Baltic states together in one video and stuff like that. But let me know what you guys think. So yeah, remember to bully racists.